I'm a 27-year-old woman, and for the past 10 years, I've been living alone in the house I grew up in. That started when I was 17, right after my parents left for what they called a temporary travel sabbatical. They'd been talking about it for months, how they needed to rediscover themselves, how the world was calling, how life was too short not to explore. At first, they made it sound like they'd be gone for 6 months, maybe a year max. They hugged me, told me to hold down the fort, and promised they'd be back before I even noticed they were gone. That was a lie. By the time I turned 18, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs to cover utilities and groceries while still finishing high school. They were already in Greece at that point, sending blurry selfies in front of ancient ruins and captions like living our best life. I still had to feed the cats, mow the lawn, deal with the broken AC unit, and figure out how to pay for the leaking water heater. Every time I asked about money, they brushed it off. "We'll reimburse you," they said. "Just keep the place running. You're doing great." I didn't go to college. I had been accepted to a culinary program abroad that I'd dreamed of since I was 14. I didn't go. My parents said they couldn't afford to fly back and manage the house, that the animals were used to me, that it would be too disruptive if I left. I still have the acceptance email. Never deleted it. At first, it was little things, replacing light bulbs, managing the mail, feeding the cats, cleaning the gutters. But then the bills started coming. Property tax, insurance notices, plumbing repairs. My name wasn't on anything official, but the payments were all coming out of my pocket. I'd send them the invoices. They'd ignore them. I started taking screenshots, building a file. I didn't even realize I was building a case back then. I just didn't want to forget how much I was spending. Meanwhile, their sabbatical turned into a never-ending honeymoon. Bali, Spain, Morocco. I saw my own parents more through their Instagram posts than in real life. When they did come back, usually once a year around the holidays, they acted like guests. They didn't ask how I was doing or what I needed. They expected the guest room cleaned, the fridge stocked, the house warm. They even left their laundry behind when they flew out again. And every time they returned, they brought more stuff. Trinkets from Paris, masks from Ghana, carved boxes from Thailand. They filled up the closets, shoved my things aside, used up space in every room with souvenirs I never asked for. I started fixing the place up, not just because it needed it, but because I needed something to call mine. I saved for months and redid the kitchen myself, painted the exterior, paid for new flooring in the living room, got a new water heater. I wasn't living large, but I was making it work. Eventually, I got a remote job in tech that paid well enough to drop the part-time gigs and focus on the house full-time. I didn't have roommates. I didn't need help. I had everything covered, just me and the cats. They always told me it's basically your house now, that I was holding it down better than they ever did. They even joked that I should start charging them rent when they visited. I thought that was their way of saying thank you. Friends kept telling me to move out, as that I was letting them use me, that I was stuck. But I always had an excuse. What would happen to the house? To the cats? To the garden I started? I'd tell myself it was just temporary. Just a little longer. Just until they settled down and came home for good. A cousin of mine moved nearby a couple of years ago. We weren't close, but he'd stop by sometimes, always with comments like, "Man, this place is a museum," or "You're basically the caretaker now." I'd laugh it off, not knowing how literal that would become. Nobody in the family ever said anything about what I was giving up. No one asked why a 20-year-old girl was buying roof shingles instead of textbooks, or why she was filing taxes for a house she didn't own. I wasn't bitter, not then. I was tired, but I thought I was doing the right thing. That changed a few months ago. I was sorting through the mail when I saw a thick envelope with my parents' lawyer's return address. I opened it without thinking, figured it was another document I'd need to scan for them. Inside was an updated version of their will. I read it twice before it made sense. The house, the one I'd been taking care of for a decade, wasn't going to me. It was going to that same cousin. The one who joked about the place being a museum. The one who never lifted a finger to help. They left me nothing. Not even the furniture I bought. I checked the postmark. It had been sent 2 weeks ago. My parents didn't even bother to call. That was the day something cracked. The morning after I read the will, I called my parents. I asked them why they were giving the house to my uncle's son, a guy I've seen maybe 5 times in my entire life. I didn't yell. I just asked. My mother's voice didn't even change. She said he's starting a family and they wanted to give him a head start. That he deserved it more than I did because he was trying to build something. I reminded her I'd been living here for 10 years, that I paid every bill, fixed every broken pipe, replaced the roof, that I gave up school, travel, and a life just to keep this place standing. My father called me dramatic and said I've always been independent, so I'd land on my feet. My mom added that I was just taking care of the house temporarily anyway, that it was always theirs. That call ended with no apology, no explanation, just a list of excuses. They never asked how I found out, never asked what I needed. That same day, I pulled every record I had. I logged into every utility account, printed bank statements going back years, pulled up a decade of photos showing before and after of the house. I made copies of emails and texts, every message where they asked me to handle repairs, or said we owe you or you're amazing for keeping things running. The house deed was still in their name, just like I thought. But every expense, every account, every improvement, it was all under mine. Water, gas, electric, taxes, internet, insurance, pest control, even the cat's vet bills. A coworker noticed I was quiet that day and asked if I was okay. I told her what happened. She connected me with a real estate attorney her brother used during a property dispute. He called me that same evening. I sent him everything I had. We went over the history, the receipts, the timeline. He asked how long I had been living there alone, how often my parents returned, and whether I had ever paid rent. The answer was 10 years, once a year max, and never. He told me something I didn't expect to hear. There might be a path through adverse possession. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was real. He said with how long I'd been living there, how I'd paid everything, and how I'd treated the house as my own, there was a case to be made. I went back through all my files and started organizing them, year by year, project by project, I found receipts for flooring, electrical work, kitchen cabinets, appliances, insulation, landscaping. I even had handwritten notes from a contractor I'd worked with who left town years ago. That weekend, I changed the locks. Every door. Front, back, side entrance, garage. I didn't send a warning. I just did it. I added a keypad system with remote access so I could see who came and went. I also changed the codes on the alarm system and moved the spare key from the usual hiding spot. A few days later, I got a call from my father. He tried to visit, couldn't get in. He was furious. Said I was cutting him off from his legacy. I told him clearly if he wanted to fight me for the house, he could take me to court. That was it. He hung up. Then my mom started texting. Paragraphs. I didn't reply. I told my workplace everything. I was honest. Legal battle with my parents, potential court case, possible stress. They gave me 2 weeks paid time off without hesitation. My boss said to let her know if I needed more. That same week, a friend from work came over and helped me install 2 more outdoor cameras and no trespassing signs. I mounted one of the signs to the gate and another to the front window. Then it started again. One morning, I walked out to find my uncle and cousin standing at the edge of the driveway. I didn't open the gate. They smiled like this was some friendly visit. The cousin was holding a baby carrier in one hand and a duffel bag in the other. I told them they weren't coming in. The uncle said I needed to do what's right for the family and let them settle in. I didn't move. I pointed to the sign, told them they were trespassing. I had them on camera. Next time it happened, I'd call the police. They left. Slowly. My cousin smirked as they walked away, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't care. That night, I sat down at the kitchen table and finished labeling the files for my lawyer. I sent them in a zipped folder and marked it with the subject, complete documentation. I wasn't asking for anything. I was protecting what I'd already earned. 10 years, thousands of dollars, a life built brick by brick. I was done leaving the door open. A week after changing the locks, a man rang my doorbell early on a Tuesday. Dress shoes, clipboard, branded polo. He introduced himself as a real estate agent and said he was there for a walkthrough. My parents had listed the house with him and told him to start showing it this week. I didn't let him pass the front step. I asked who hired him, and he pulled out a printed document with my parents' names on it. No mention of me. No notice. No call. No email. Nothing. He said I wasn't on the deed, so technically I didn't need to be informed. I called my lawyer the second the guy left. She issued a cease and desist that afternoon and sent copies to both the agent and my parents. She also submitted a formal letter warning them that if they moved forward with any sale or listing attempts, we'd file an injunction and take them to court. They hadn't even tried to hide it, just assumed I wouldn't fight back. We filed paperwork the next day, a legal claim of equitable interest and a petition to start formal adverse possession proceedings. I signed everything that afternoon and sent in another stack of evidence, utility bills, renovation receipts, with records showing I'd been the sole occupant and sole payer for 10 years. My lawyer pulled property photos from Google Street View going back to 2013. Everyone showed me mowing the lawn, fixing shutters, shoveling snow. Then she found the email chain. Turns out the real estate agent had forwarded us messages from my parents where they explained I was just the caretaker and wouldn't resist the sale. They said I was used to being in the background and wouldn't make a scene. That went straight into our legal file. I updated the signs around the house, no trespassing, private residence, security cameras in use. I printed a few more and handed them out to neighbors on either side, just in case someone tried to enter when I wasn't home. Most of them already knew the situation. One neighbor told me she'd never seen my parents do any upkeep since they moved out. She offered to write a letter confirming that if I needed it. On my lawyer's advice, I scheduled a video call with my parents and recorded it with their consent. During the call, I asked clearly, when was the last time they paid for anything related to the house? They both agreed, 2014. They also admitted they hadn't visited for more than 2 weeks at a time and that all improvements were done by me. That call went straight into our court package. Then came their counteroffer. They emailed a proposal that they'd add me as a co-owner of the house, but only if I allowed my cousin to move in full-time and helped him settle. They said I could stay too, but I'd need to share common areas and act like family. We didn't even respond. The next day, I got locked out of an online account, an old savings account my grandmother had set up for me years ago, right before she passed. My mom had retained some kind of access, and when the bank checked, they confirmed it had been recently closed and transferred out. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough that I noticed. That same week, I got calls from 2 distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. One said she heard I was having mental health issues and lashing out at the family. Another asked if I was okay on medication. Both calls were strange, vague, and clearly based on rumors. It didn't take long to figure out where it was coming from. My cousin had been spreading lies to anyone who would listen. The goal was obvious: make me seem unstable before the court date, discredit me before I could speak. I didn't wait to react. I typed out a full statement explaining what had been going on, with screenshots, photos, copies of documents, and a timeline. I sent it to every relative who'd ever met me and added a note saying I would not be discussing it further but wanted them to have the facts. Some replied. Most didn't. But one call came through that mattered. My mother's older sister. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd gone no contact with most of the family after a falling out decades ago, but she had always been kind to me as a kid. She told me she'd always suspected I was being used. She offered to write a statement and, if needed, testify in court. We added her name to the witness list. By the end of the week, we had legal grounds, community witnesses, direct evidence of abandonment, and an official claim filed. My cousin stopped posting after that. My parents didn't call. My lawyer said we were in the strongest position possible short of already having a judgment. Every move they made had just made our case stronger. They thought I'd fold. They thought I'd keep quiet. They were wrong. 2 weeks after we filed for adverse possession, my lawyer submitted a quiet title lawsuit. But this was the next step. It meant asking the court to legally recognize me as the rightful owner based on 10 straight years of possession, responsibility, and improvements, everything documented, us down to the penny. She expedited the request. No delays, no waiting games. The case was too clean. Word got around the family fast. A few relatives sent short texts of support, others, not so much. My father left a voicemail the same day we filed, blaming me for tearing the family apart over just a house. I didn't call back. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer and blocked the number. While digging through some older folders for a missing invoice, I found something I hadn't noticed before, an outdated policy notice from our old home insurance company. It was addressed to my parents. I called the company. They said the policy had been canceled years ago. I asked when. They said 2016. No one told me. I bought a new policy that same day. Full coverage, including liability and structure. No co-owners. Just me. Paid up for a full year in advance. Later that week, my aunt connected me with someone she knew, a forensic accountant. He agreed to help estimate the value of the unpaid labor and expenses I'd covered over the years. We went line by line. Plumbing, roofing, electrical, pest control, landscaping. He tallied everything up, then added market-adjusted labor rates for someone maintaining a property this size alone. It added up fast. My lawyer and I started building the trial binder. Each section had labels, utilities, repairs, taxes, maintenance, upgrades. I had saved everything. Digital copies, photos, even paper receipts from hardware stores. She flipped through it once and said we were in better shape than most actual homeowners she'd worked with. We brought in a licensed home appraiser. He walked the house, asked about materials, compared current finishes with dated online photos. His final report said the renovations had added over $100,000 in equity, entirely funded by me. That document went on top of the binder. The next incident happened on a Thursday afternoon. I heard voices outside and looked through the front window. My uncle and cousin were on the lawn with 2 suitcases and a folding crib. They didn't knock. They just stood there, waiting. I didn't go out. I called the non-emergency police line and reported unauthorized visitors. They left before the patrol arrived, but the whole thing was recorded on my camera system. I sent the footage to my lawyer. She submitted it to the court and requested a no-contact order. 3 days later, I received a typed letter in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a 2-page rant, mostly personal attacks. My cousin claimed I was being brainwashed by outsiders, warned me about turning my back on family loyalty, and added a list of things I'd supposedly owed to the family over the years. I scanned it, emailed it to my lawyer, and shredded the original. That night, I upgraded the motion sensor lights and added 2 more door sensors with remote access from my phone. My coworker helped me walk the perimeter with a checklist. We made sure every possible blind spot was covered. Then it got worse. My boss called me in for a private meeting. Someone had contacted the company anonymously claiming I was unstable and hinted I might be a threat to the work environment. HR flagged it, investigated, and found zero basis. But they let me know. The call had come from an out-of-state number that matched the area code where my cousin lives. HR filed an internal alert and told me to notify them if anything else came up. A few days after that, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, the old family handyman. He'd done dozens of jobs for me over the years: gutters, tiling, tree removal, deck repairs. I always paid in cash or Venmo. He told me he'd heard through a mutual connection what was happening. Without being asked, he wrote up a sworn statement confirming I was the only one who ever hired or paid him. My lawyer added it to the witness list. The court date was set. We finalized my affidavit the next morning. It had every detail: when I moved in, how the bills shifted over time, what I'd upgraded, what I'd maintained, how many visits my parents actually made. My lawyer read through it and said one line: "This speaks for itself." The courthouse was packed the morning of the hearing. I walked in with my lawyer, my aunt, the handyman, and a former neighbor. All 3 had agreed to testify. We were early. My parents arrived 15 minutes late with no lawyer, no binder, not even a notebook. Just them, standing like they were at a family brunch instead of a courtroom. The judge noticed immediately. She asked if they were representing themselves. They said yes. When asked why they didn't bring documentation, they gave vague answers, something about keeping things simple. The judge didn't seem impressed. My lawyer presented our binder. She placed it on the evidence table, opened the index, and walked through each section. There were tax records from 2014 to 2024, repair invoices, screenshots of utilities paid under my name, photos of the house from before and after major renovations. The judge took her time flipping through. Then the handyman was called. He testified under oath that I had hired him for every job: roofing, deck work, plumbing, yard maintenance. He said he'd never spoken to my parents about any of it and that they hadn't paid him once in over a decade. He backed it up with receipts and messages showing dates and payments. Next came my aunt. She told the court how I was left behind at 17 while my parents flew around the world, how they stayed in touch only through casual emails and vacation photos, how I handled the pets, the bills, and the house entirely on my own. She said what everyone in the family already knew but never admitted out loud, that they left me to grow up alone with full adult responsibilities while they were off living like retirees. Then the judge asked my parents about the will, why they had chosen to gift the house to my cousin instead of me. They stumbled, said he was starting a family and needed help. They couldn't explain why someone who had never lived in the house and hadn't paid for a single thing should inherit it. The judge asked again, still no clear answer. My former neighbor testified last. She lived across the street for 15 years, said she'd watched me clean gutters, repaint siding, deal with burst pipes and late-night emergencies. She said my parents never stayed longer than a few days and were never involved in any upkeep. She mentioned seeing me out in the rain once, fixing a pipe in the side yard with nothing but a flashlight and a wrench. At one point during her testimony, my cousin stood up in the gallery and tried to shout something about this being a setup. Court staff immediately stepped in and removed him from the room. The judge didn't even pause. My parents tried one last explanation. They claimed they had always intended to help me out eventually. The judge asked for proof. Emails, texts, anything. They had nothing, just vague stories about future plans and intentions that were never followed through. Then the judge asked how much money they had spent on the property since 2014. They admitted, none, not a dime. Not for water, not for taxes, not for maintenance. My lawyer gave her closing argument. She walked the judge through the requirements for adverse possession, exclusive use, public claim, financial responsibility, passage of time. She explained how every point had been clearly met and how no one else had a claim or contribution. The judge ruled in my favor. She granted me full legal ownership of the house, effective immediately. All claims from my parents and cousin were void. The deed would be updated under my name. No shared ownership. No conditions. My parents tried to speak again, but the judge had already adjourned. We walked out of the courtroom in silence. The sun hit different that day. For the first time in 10 years, the house was mine, legally, completely, and permanently. 3 days after the court ruling, I came home from the grocery store and found my backyard destroyed. Planters were overturned. 2 outdoor chairs were slashed open. One of the solar lanterns had been shattered. The back wall of the house had the word "thief spray" painted across it in red. My name wasn't on it, but the message was clear. I checked the security footage immediately. Around 2:37 a.m., 3 people hopped the back fence. One of them was my cousin. The others were guys I didn't recognize. They tore through the garden, broke pots, ripped out tomato plants by the roots, and kicked over the water barrel. One of them tossed a rock at the motion camera near the garage. It cracked, but the footage survived. I called the police and filed a report that same morning. I handed over the footage, a printout of the freeze frames with all 3 faces visible, and a time-stamped USB drive. The officer assigned to the case said it was more than enough to identify them. That same afternoon, my lawyer submitted a request for a restraining order against my cousin and added the incident to our civil file. The cousin denied everything when questioned, but the footage made it impossible to ignore. The police filed charges for trespassing, vandalism, and property damage. My lawyer said it would hold up in court with no problem. We had digital proof, a police report, and a direct link to the prior dispute. I called a local contractor the next day and booked an urgent install. They came out that week and fitted all exterior doors with reinforced steel locks. I also approved a full privacy fence installation, 7 feet tall, treated wood, no gaps. It went up within 5 days. I paid out of pocket but kept the receipts for the damages claim. My lawyer filed a civil suit the following Monday. We were asking for full reimbursement for repairs, materials, labor, and property value lost due to the incident. I wasn't trying to bankrupt anyone. I just wanted every dollar spent on fixing what they broke. 2 days later, one of my neighbors walked over and handed me a sticky note. It had a license plate number scribbled in blue pen. She said she saw a black SUV circling my street multiple times the night after the vandalism. I looked up the plate. It matched a vehicle owned by one of my cousin's college friends, someone I'd seen once at a family barbecue. I gave the info to my lawyer, who filed a supplemental witness report and added it to the civil claim. I started repairs that same weekend. Instead of just replacing what they ruined, I redesigned the garden. I planted a full herb terrace, boxed and tiered with limestone edging. Lavender, rosemary, mint, basil, thyme, oregano, all in new planters, anchored and locked to the ground. I added solar path lights, set timers, and ran new irrigation tubing under the gravel. Inside the house, I made upgrades I'd been putting off for years. I ordered a handmade dining table from a woodworker across town, oak top, deep walnut legs. I replaced the old backsplash in the kitchen with handmade tiles from a shop I'd followed online for ages. It took 2 weekends and 3 friends to help, but we got it done. The place didn't just look fixed, it looked new. A few weeks later, I got the official letter from the county recorder's office. The title was finalized. My name was the only one listed, no pending claims, no shared interest, no family connections, just me. I removed the old mailbox that still had our family name printed across it in faded vinyl. I replaced it with a metal one I ordered custom online, black finish, my name in bold white letters. No frills. No room for interpretation. The next Saturday, I hosted a housewarming dinner in the backyard. Just the people who had stood by me, my aunt, the coworker who helped install cameras, the neighbor who testified, and the handyman who gave a statement. We strung up lights, set out folding chairs, and grilled in the new garden space. As the sun set, the yard lit up softly. The planter boxes lined the patio. The string lights swayed in the breeze. We ate, talked, and played quiet music through a speaker tucked into the herb shelf. Nobody brought up the court case. Nobody mentioned my parents or cousin. That night, I didn't check the cameras or double lock the doors 3 times. I sat at my new table, looked out over the backyard, and realized I wasn't just defending a place anymore. It was mine. Every inch of it. The court finalized everything 2 months after the backyard vandalism. My cousin accepted a plea deal. He pled guilty to trespassing and property damage, agreed to pay full restitution, and was put under supervised court terms. A 5-year no contact and no approach order was added. He's not allowed within 200 feet of my home or workplace. My lawyer moved quickly to wrap up the rest. She filed paperwork to disconnect every financial tie my parents had ever linked to me. Power of attorney? Terminated. Old joint tax accounts? Closed. She even tracked down an outdated shared utility profile from when I was 19. Everything was cut. We transferred the property into a new living trust under my name, sole owner. No cosigners, no relatives. The trust also covered my personal assets, furniture, savings, documents, and anything tied to the house. It was airtight. The paperwork was notarized and filed within a week. The civil court processed the final payment not long after. I received $18,000 in damages and legal reimbursement. I hired a landscaping crew and finished the last phase of my outdoor plans: drought-resistant plants, stone borders, raised garden beds, and an automatic irrigation system. The entire yard was transformed. A week later, I started something I'd pushed off for 10 years, architecture school. I'd enrolled quietly months earlier, and now it was finally real. Classes were part-time and online, but it was enough. My first assignment was to sketch a home layout from memory. I chose this one. That month, during a city-run neighborhood planning meeting, someone brought up my name. A city inspector had praised the quality of my renovations during a recent walkthrough. They suggested me as a candidate for the local planning committee. I accepted the role. Meetings were once a month. I started contributing ideas around preservation and community zoning laws. My aunt moved into a nearby town and invited me to join a women's mentorship group she helped organize. I went once, listened, then started quietly helping. Lease reviews, property questions, how to document payments, how to handle landlords. I answered only when asked. I didn't bring up my own story. Didn't need to. Within 3 months, I was getting regular texts from women I'd never met in person. Most were younger, a few older, all asking simple questions I wished I'd known how to ask 10 years ago. The 1-year anniversary of the court decision came and went. I hosted brunch in the backyard. Just 6 people: my aunt, the coworker who helped with security, the neighbor who gave me the plate number, the handyman, and 2 from the mentorship circle. No speeches, just homemade food and a quiet toast. A few days later, the adult daughter of a neighbor stopped by with a note. It said her parents always hoped someone like me would end up in this house, that they were glad it was loved again. While organizing the attic that weekend, I found an old journal. The handwriting was mine, 17 years old. Every page started with an apology for asking, for bothering, for being unsure. I closed it, placed it back in the box, locked it away, and went downstairs to water the new plants. The gate clicked shut behind me. I didn't turn around.